Cameras down.
Okay. Good morning, Facebook Live. Renee Nelson here in the 10 News Live Center, and we are talking this morning with Congressman Issa. Thank you so much for being here. This is the first interview that we have with you since announcing that you won't be seeking re-election in your district.
I'm in a countdown with about a year left, a lot to do, but looking forward to transitioning back into private life.
I bet. Now, I know they asked you out there, will you be seeking another political office? Of course, there's been tons of rumors about you possibly looking at Duncan Hunter's seat. I listened to your answer, but tell us again.
Look, Duncan Hunter has my endorsement. The accusations against his wife are 3 years old, and unless something else changes, there's not anyone that should be considering a run for that seat. You know, he's represented the district and the military personnel in San Diego extremely well, just like his father did. You know, and I don't get into that sort of conjecture. The fact is, I've served 18 years. I've had an honor of representing San Diego, Orange, and Riverside County. And at some point you look and say, what's next in my life? I'm getting a lot of offers. Some are within government, and then some in the private sector again. And I'm looking forward to that transition while still staying involved in civic activities.
Okay, now that sounds like a pretty clear answer to me, that you're not seeking Duncan Hunter's seat, but you did make a point of saying in your release that you weren't retiring.
I'm not retiring at all. I've spun off the work I've done in open government into 2 separate nonprofits that operate in Washington, one working on data integrity, how you sort of do the process of making open government, and the other one directly called the Open Gov Foundation. These both work to try to make the federal government more transparent, accountable, and thus honest. I work with the inspector generals. These are things that aren't going away, and if I'm offered some role in boards or commissions that do that on the government side, I may say yes. You know, I didn't come to government needing a job or financial reimbursement. I've had the ability to give my salary away for all the years I've been there. But the honor is one of those things where at some point it's time for somebody else to do it. And I still have a lot of things I want to do that will help make our government more accountable to the people.
Now, there were some rumors that potentially you were pushed out of your seat, or that maybe that Republicans were maybe seeking another candidate in your place. Any truth to that?
Not a bit. I was listed as a patriot, you know, which it had specific support of the leadership. And if I stayed, I'd have chaired the Judiciary Committee of Congress. But again, you know, I've been there 18 years. You know, you ask if not now, then when? And that's a big part of why I'm doing it. This is a time in which the candidate I'm endorsing will have an opportunity to be seen in a quieter environment than a presidential year. And that's important because even though she's represented most, and in some cases all of the district for more than a decade, people have to focus on her not as a state officer, but as somebody going to Washington to do the same thing she did so well in Sacramento for all the people of this district.
Now, you said 18 years of service, and you've done some great work in that time. Obviously, still a year of good, important work to do. Talk to me about the government shutdown and your position on how that played out.
Well, it's one of the more unusual ones because it's the first time I've seen the government shut down because somebody liked the bill but wanted something unrelated in it. And having said that, one of the things that is going on is I have a proposed bill or actual bill that is for the so-called Dreamers, the DACA fix, that is balanced and that I hope we're able to get across the finish line by March because it really is time to put that chapter behind us of if you will, the victims of illegal immigration. But we've got to do it in a way that we're not having another 6 or 8 or 100,000 coming hoping for the same thing. And that balancing act is not something you do over the threat of a shutdown. You do it on a bipartisan way so that the fix lasts.
Okay. And how do you feel about the wall versus not a wall, and so many Californians against that idea?
You know, Californians aren't against it. They don't understand it. We've had a wall in San Diego, which we called a fence, and that's one of the reasons is that it was, in fact, first a welded fence and then later more professional. Anyone that wants to go down to the border and see it, what they'll see is fences that make our Border Patrol agents able to patrol the border safer, It reduces the chances that coyotes will come through and drug traffickers, and people will die trying to get across. So it works. I've been here for 30 years, so I've seen it when we didn't have it, when people ran across a highway. You know, one thing that any voter in San Diego can do is go down to the border, go to Tijuana, drive along that road that's right along the road, and you'll see something you don't even think about. There's a fence between the two sides of the road in Mexico. You know what that fence is for? So many people died trying to run across that road to jump in to the United States that Mexico put up a border fence between two halves of a freeway. So a fence that makes the Border Patrol safer, a system of legal immigration, a guest worker program, and we are in fact on to doing it right. That's something that Duncan Hunter, the father, started on years ago. And so San Diego already has what the president talks about, and it works for us.
And obviously it's very important to President Trump to include that wall in any talks about DACA. Now, you've been aligned a lot of times with President Trump. Has that cost you politically? No,
I think people, you know, they batter you with Trump. Look, I'm not a tweeter. Policy takes a lot more detail, but I do detailed legislation. The fact is, I agree with the president that it's time not to keep talking about a problem that's been going on for decades, that we should find real fixes. The president has not forced the wall necessarily to be part of DACA, but he does want comprehensive immigration reform that goes to a merit system like most of our economic competitors have, including Australia and Canada, Great Britain. So that process, yes, I hope to get done in this year. The border wall funding, you know what? Anyone wants to get a Border Patrol agent, that Border Patrol agents, the men and women who put their lives at risk, will tell you these fences save lives of both the people trying to come over and our Border Patrol agents. And that latter part is very important. We spend billions on Border Patrol agents. We also bury Border Patrol agents year after year for lack of some of those barriers.
And that's got to weigh heavily on your mind, too, hearing those stories about the border agents that don't return home that night.
Well, and, you know, I've been involved in the Fast and Furious investigation. Brian Terry died because coyotes and, quote, drug smugglers freely push back and forth over the Arizona border. It's an unsafe region. It's one in which they can surprise you, and in his case, he was surprised and gunned down. So I look at those kinds of losses, but even in San Diego County, we've had people who simply died because the terrain is rough and patrolling it without a border road, which is part of that sort of multi-fence, made it much more dangerous. We've had vehicles roll and we've had Border Patrol agents die. And I think the safety of the people we ask to do that and the safety of people who are trying to get here, that's one of the reasons you have to have what we have in San Diego. We have the busiest border anywhere in the world. We let more people go back and forth, whether by day, week, or month, or forever. And we've got a good border system. Juan Vargas and the other members, we've worked on expanding that for commerce, but also for foot traffic. And that's where Diane Harkey is going to have to pick up where I left off.
And let's get back to your district. It has changed quite a bit. It's gone from a highly Republican district to a little bit more of a mix now. How does that affect who you've chosen to endorse here?
Well, you know, what's interesting is that the district lines have changed. The area that you generally represent, San Diego, Riverside, Orange, counties, they really haven't changed. The demographics haven't changed much. I now represent the University of California, San Diego, where over 90% of the vote went blindly toward the Democratic Party. Well, you know what? Young people vote that way. So that makes it a little bit more different. But I've always tried to promote the University of California, high-tech jobs that when people graduate from that university, we try to keep them here. H-1B reform, something that's working on right now. And so, in a sense, I've always represented these areas. Yes, the district lines changed. Hillary Clinton won this district by 7 points. And the candidates, one of them is one from last time. And I think now that people know him, he not only will lose like he did last time, but he'll lose by larger amounts to Diane Harkey, who I think we should get on the set.
Absolutely.
Diane, if you join us.
Thank you.
You should never mention somebody's name without introducing them. But,
I'm here.
and just briefly, Diane's been representing Southern California. As a matter of fact, every voter in the 49th District has already voted for her 3 years ago. She's been at the Board of Equalization representing about a quarter of the state. And as a result, she's adjudicated and solved hundreds and hundreds of tax problems for companies and individuals large and small. That's the kind of casework that, on top of her years in the state assembly, means I know what she cares about. She cares about how do we keep government from ruining business. She's a good conservative vote, which right now we need. You know, one of the things that Diane was a leader on was opposing the last tax bill, which I voted against, because it wasn't fair to California's tax system. And that's a pretty bold thing to do when you're a Republican, but Diane has also opposed all tax increases during her years of service. And that's important if you're going to go to Washington.
Great.
I also understand what it means to have to just take a little and come back again. Having worked in the legislature in California, you never get the whole idea. You get a part of it and you come back, or you negotiate such that you make the bill better. And I think that's what I was able to do by proselytizing for California and for this district and for Southern California on the tax reform. We did get the SALT allocation, and it could be any number of taxes could fit into that. And we also got a mortgage deduction and other items there that made it a little bit better, and I was on the front lines of that. So I'll probably go back and do a little cleanup language to help us further.
What's the most important thing you'll be doing there for Californians if you do win?
Oh, for Californians, working on the economy, being sure that we stay strong, being sure that we're represented, ensuring that they understand California's dynamics. 39 million people, only 2 senators. There's a huge, Southern California's urban, suburban. We have, beautiful beaches and oceans we need to preserve. We have transportation issues that we need to address. So with the infrastructure bond or infrastructure bill, I will plan on being actively involved in that. I think there's a lot we can do there. And water. We need water in Southern California, and so I'm going to be very active in those areas. And of course, there's always the border issues, but Mr. Issa is correct. We have 15 miles of border wall already, and that's what I told somebody when they said, well, what do you think of it? I said, it's already there. And if you've been down there, you've seen people coming and going. They get day passes. It is a free-flowing border, but there is some protection for those that would be taken advantage of, so to speak, give all their money to the coyotes, and then be, harmed out in the desert. It's not a simple solution. So I'm going to be working on that and everything else that we've got here. There's just a lot to deal with. The military is 25% of San Diego's economy. We have to have a strong military, and we need to keep that industry functioning because it's very important to Southern California, and this is a big military district.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things is Diane has done a good job representing in Sacramento the California National Guard. But now going to Washington, those Camp Pendleton Marines, they're a key part of this district. Those 47,000 men and women have deployed more than any other base in the country and done more in the war on terror to keep us safe.